right, everyone, welcome back to the Upset Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Latasha Hewitt, and I have the rest of the crew with me. What's up, everybody?
We
Hey,
here.
hey, hey.
Yeah.
All right.
Yes, we want to jump right in because this is a great topic. We're kind of in that I'm black and I'm proud type of way right now. I've been seeing a lot of I'm blackety blackness is in, right? You guys been hearing a lot about that.
Yeah.
But
The GP with the Shiki on coming. Look at
I
that.
mean, I'm black every day of the year, not just in February.
Yeah.
yeah,
Right.
yeah, 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 yeah.
All right.
But sometimes we have a way of trying to challenge someone else's blackness. We may be proud in our own blackness, but we challenge the blackness of our very own. And so, Tally, you're gonna lead us in a little discussion about how sometimes we can hurt our own with how we treat each other, huh?
Okay. Well, thanks for that, Latasha. I appreciate it. Recently, in the parlance of today's vernacular, I was awakened, so you can now say that I'm woke, to a topic that made me rethink the need that some black people have to categorize other black people or to cause them to feel insufficient in their blackness by using an epithet. And that epithet is the two words, Uncle Tom.
Mhm.
I was watching a documentary about a minister named Josiah Lynch who lived in the 1800s. This minister became the basis of a topic or of a character by the name of Uncle Tom in a book that was written by Harriet Beecher Stowe called Uncle Tom's Cabin. Now, for those of you who don't know, Uncle Tom's Cabin was written by Harriet Beecher Stowe, she was an avowed abolitionist, and she wrote the book to villainize the work of the Southern planters and plantation owners and to make the slave appear more heroic. Uncle Tom was the main character. The idea was to make him look so noble and heroic that other whites would become sympathetic toward the slave and would become angered at the evil and the atrocities of slavery. So Uncle Tom was written as a hero, though not fully empowered. And the person that his life was based on, Josiah Henson, was a truly heroic person. He was a slave, he was a gentleman, he was a Christian, and at one point, realizing the perfidious nature of slaveholders, he escaped from slavery, went to Canada, established the Dawn Settlement that still exists to this day as a museum, and then came back across the Canadian American border to help 118 other people escape to freedom from slavery. So the character of Uncle Tom is a heroic character. The person upon whom it was based, Josiah Henson, is a truly heroic character. So where did we get the idea that Uncle Tom was a person who was counter to the interest of black people? Well, now this is where it becomes poisonous. That came about because the character of Uncle Tom was so persuasive, so influential in getting people to want to get rid of slavery, that racist and white supremacists began to launch minstrel shows where they perverted the character of Uncle Tom to make him look like what he was not. They used those minstrel shows to try to mock black men in general. And so after a while, the minstrel shows began to exert such an influence that people began to laugh at the Uncle Tom character as he had been perverted by white supremacists. This caused people at a certain point to ignore the true Uncle Tom from the book Uncle Tom's Cabin and the person who became the basis for that character, Josiah Henson. So whenever we use the expression Uncle Tom, we are simply following the examples of and working on behalf of white supremacists and racists who want us to forget how noble certain black people can be. So we should
Gotcha.
stop using that expression. But even more than that, the idea that one of us can tell the other one of us whether or not you need to do something, be black enough, in my opinion, is anathema to good Christianity and to good sociology. So I stand today, my fellow upsetters, to say, let us, from this point forward, forswear from the use of the epithet Uncle Tom. What say ye one? What say ye all?
Well,
Wait.
first of all,
Is there a positive way? I mean, can we use it in a positive way?
Yes, yes. I think
Yeah,
that you're.
if you have an uncle who's named Tom.
right, right, Uncle Tom.
I think,
Wow.
Patrick, that you're a great Uncle Tom.
Well,
That
and-
you help other black people to find freedom, and that you live in such a way that your character is so noble that I want to support any cause that would liberate you from any evil that might be set you.
Wow.
You are, sir, a model
Yo.
Uncle Tom.
Hold on, Tally. This is kind of heavy
Yeah.
because
It is.
Yeah.
a lot of us have just believed that an Uncle Tom is a black person who's a sellout, who does not have other blacks' interest at heart.
Right.
You know, we can name some names. We can call the roll. What? Ben Carson? What? What's up? Huh? You know, I have a childhood friend that I grew up with who looks like me. He's Haitian American, but politically he does not think like me.
Right.
And I consider him to be an Uncle Tom.
Yeah.
And I haven't canceled him as a friend, but I totally disagree with his mindset. He aligns himself with the Republican Party and he is networked and he's doing some cool things. But I'm just like, bro, you are a sellout.
There are times when we make decisions and judgments about people, and then we discover that we are wrong in those decisions and judgments.
Wow.
I am submitting to you that this requires massive energy on our part to change the paradigm in our own head about who Uncle Tom is, and to recognize if we misuse the character, that we are admitting and acknowledging that we have been duped, persuaded, as Malcolm X would say, that we have been hoodwinked by racist and white supremacists
Yeah.
who intentionally twisted and distorted this character so that people would not recognize the patent nobility that the black slave had. That we are basically standing in line asking them to give us our paycheck for serving their purposes.
Wow. So do you
Well-
think, okay, so when we talk about cancel culture, so what is the origin of blacks canceling each other? Was it the dark slaves versus the light slaves? When did it happen?
Well, the origin is people speak of the Willie Lynch syndrome, and folks have pretty much discovered that the Willie Lynch letter is not a truly historical document. But the spirit of it is, and that is where a certain plantation owner supposedly said the best way to keep your slaves servile and under your thumb was to turn one against the other. So the origin
Divide
of
and
cancel culture and slavery was for the white supremacists, for the racist, for the overseer, for the slave holder to figure out a way to get you to turn against Charles. And what he would do was get you to make comparisons of either skin tone or tribal allegiance or orientation, whatever he could do to get one to distrust the other. And we're still doing that. I mean, if you don't vote my way, then you're an Uncle Tom. We will hurl that epithet. Well, the idea is to cancel you and to take on a power and an authority that we don't have. Whenever we try to assume powers that are not ours by either entitlement or nativity, we find ourselves standing before the serpent in the garden, listening to a lie that says, "Ye shall be as gods." And we do not have that power. We cannot God-like take that power to ourselves and decide, okay, Latasha's no longer black enough, so she's out.
And
You know, growing up in my neighborhood, we threw around Uncle Tom all the time,
All the time.
especially if folk from our neighborhood hung out with white folk or, you know, partied with them or whatever. We, you know, immediately said they're Uncle Tom. That I think when you're educated properly on that reference, if someone calls you an Uncle Tom, you should say thank you very much for that accolade.
Exactly.
Well, not
that's
really.
going to be hard. I feel
Thanks
like
for the compliment.
Yeah.
yeah, it's going to be hard to change the connotation of Uncle Tom. I do believe there's some education that needs to take place, like, with this next generation and even us re-educating ourselves. Because I hate the fact that the person that the book, was based on, his name, I mean, his honor has been
Hijacked.
Smirched.
yeah.
Yes, yeah.
And
I mean,
and so even though I think we can never really say Uncle Tom as a compliment, I think we can do our part in re-educating and helping people understand that that doesn't really mean what you think you're saying.
Well, it's going to take some time because when Tally, even in the beginning, for a positive. And he said to me, and I'm going to tell you how it really felt when he said to me, "Well, Patrick, you are Uncle Tom." And all of a sudden I said,
Yeah,
I
you
almost
felt
said the
insulted,
N-word.
right?
I almost said the N-word. What? Like what? Which is another
Yeah.
term, of endearment.
Mhm.
The N-word.
Endearment.
Yes, it's a
Yeah,
term of endearment.
that's my N word, right?
Yeah,
That's
that's
You know,
Yeah.
we tried to, and that's what I was thinking too. This is kind of the opposite. Like with the N word, it was addressed to us as a derogatory thing, and then we told ourselves, "Oh, we're taking it back, and it's going to mean something positive."
Right.
Whereas Uncle Tom was almost the reverse. You know, it was supposed to be a good thing, and we made it. Or
made it
we
Made
we
it a
let
bad
them
thing,
make
yeah.
it. You know,
But
negative.
on the flip side of that, I remember Booker that worked in the office. He had given us the book, or had enlightened me to the book, The Warmth of Other Suns.
Yes.
Oh,
And I read that book cover to cover, and I used to use the N word on the pulpit.
oh
Um,
my.
yeah, but in
Oh,
context,
man.
I used to use it in context.
What? What context,
What- yeah.
please? I just want to know, like, where that
I'm
fits
glad
in your
you asked,
message.
Latasha.
Just curious.
I used to phrase it as not being black people, but being niggardly,
Ignorant.
niggardly.
Mhm.
And after reading the book, and being at Sharon Church with those who are a part of the migration from down south to Baltimore, a little old lady came to me and said, "I don't ever want to hear you use that word again. People have died over that word," and so and so. Now my the generation under me didn't care. They were like, "Yeah, we understood. We know what you're talking about." But there's another generation that's sitting there saying, my heart drops, just like when you said Uncle Tom, and I'm saying, "You call me what?" They don't even want to hear the word. I don't even think they heard the rest of the sermon or even consider me a pastor after hearing those words. So I'm saying it takes a generational turn to be able to take that out of your vernacular. And now to add it to your vernacular, now somebody's going to find out what you just talked about, Tally, and make t-shirts that says, "I'm the real Uncle Tom." So that really, when people start asking questions like, "What do you mean you're Uncle Tom?"
Mhm.
Oh, read what you gotta, or read about it, be expressive about what this is. I think that is the turn, or somebody's going to make a
A
movie,
movement.
right? Or a movie, or
Right.
you say movement, that's fine. A movie to put it out there so that we can have that change of mentality. Uncle
Yeah.
Tom.
Yeah, Pat. I'm gonna go make I'm gonna go make a TikTok, and I hope it goes viral.
Okay.
And you know what? I'll push it I'll push it, but to say Uncle Tom even now burns my left chest. I don't know. I just feel it right here. Like,
They
what?
accomplished exactly what they wanted. They wanted.
They did an amazing job perverting a force for good. This book, Uncle Tom's Cabin, as Charles had mentioned in an earlier conversation, the first day that it was produced, sold 3,000 copies, and in that time that was unheard of. It sold so well that it outsold the Bible. It sold so well and was so persuasive. I mean, everybody knew that you weren't going to get the hard-hearted slave owners and white supremacists to go against slavery, and they knew that. But there was a huge middle, just as there is today, that could be persuaded. And Harriet Beecher Stowe wrote this book and aimed it at them. And it was so persuasive that Abraham Lincoln, upon meeting Harriet Beecher Stowe, said, "So, you're the little lady whose book started this big war that we're in."
Wow.
It led to people changing their mind about acquiescing and accepting slavery as a way of life. And it led to liberation. And so to lose the value of what this character meant, and to allow it to be perverted by people who hate the freedoms that we cherish,
Yeah.
and who are against us, it is a glorious time for us to dispel ignorance by
Yeah.
asserting, a knowledge that frees a meaningful and helpful character.
Yeah,
And
I got a
so
question.
Justin is an Uncle Tom.
That's right.
Thanks for the compliment, but I got a question. Can black people have anything not be destroyed by white racists? Can we have anything? Can we preserve anything? What can we do to preserve our narrative, to preserve our truth, to preserve our glory? Like, they have to take everything and mess it up.
Well, one thing we have to use education.
That's what,
We have to educate our young
I meant
people
to say the
early.
other word.
Early. We have to let them know what it is. You know, I had a opportunity to visit and interview an Indian from this area. When I say this area, Pine Forge, he was a Lenape Indian, and I went to interview him for a project I was doing. Sat with him for 2 hours, and he said that every day that his daughters come home from high school, he has to deprogram them
Wow.
about the history
Wow.
and the heritage of the indigenous people. I mean, he said almost every day. Now, this guy was a scholar. I mean, he was used as a consultant in several movies in Hollywood. They'd fly him out there just to make sure their depiction of the indigenous people was accurate. But, you know, when we talk about, you know, training our youth and giving them, you know, the real deal, the real story, oftentimes, he said, they bring home homework assignments and so-called history books that were just totally erroneous. And he had to correct that as a parent.
But didn't this happen in the 70s when Alex Haley's book Roots come out? I remember growing up in an all-white neighborhood. Actually, we were the only Black family on our block for years. Roots comes out, I think, 78, 79, somewhere around there. I'm not sure of the date. And then now you start to wake up towards what slavery looked like, not just in the book. I'm talking about on television. Now you know what it looks like, and you could see it actually happen. You kind of said to yourself, how is that going to change everything about me? And I know this could be another show coming up, especially Black History, but we could do it after that. You know, going to my parents and asking my parents, did this really happen? And my parents say, we're from Jamaica. You know, and I'm saying, well, didn't it happen there? And then bypassing my parents and going to my grand aunt who came here in 1916, who says, oh no, it was the same thing. What you saw in Roots is the same thing that happened in the Caribbean and South America, et cetera, et cetera. I do think, GP, that we got to educate the next generation to be able to say this is ours and this is what it's going to be like. And let me just say this, and I don't mean to upset the kingdom, but
Go.
I mean, but you know, it bothers me to see even our white cousins, our white brethren, try to preach the Black way. You know, because it is a way. I'm not talking about expressiveness. I'm not talking about all of that. There is a culture behind Black preaching. There's even a class called Black preaching, you know, in the seminary. So when you talk about taking our thing, you know, taking our Uncle Tom and turning it the way it is, I've actually been in churches where we are preaching the way we preach, and they mimic us, and even ridicule that type of preaching, or ridicule the type of music, or even now to talk about the time frame. Just give me a second at this with this, even the time frame. The reason why Black people stay in church so long is because this is all we had. You know, this was our way of talking about what was going on in history. I mean, when
somebody.
Yeah, when the congressmen or the congress people around Harlem or whatever, we stayed in church to give everybody the news. And I'll say this one thing that I recognize, you know, the clerk's report in church. In some of our churches, we used to call that the King's business, right between Sabbath school and where they have all these announcements. One of the reasons why we had all those announcements in the first place. Go ahead, Tally. You want to take it from here?
No. I'm listening to you.
One of the reasons why, and I'm serious about this. One of the reasons why church was so long and all the announcements were so long, because everybody couldn't read.
And that's the same reason you read the obituary at a funeral.
That's right. Which we stopped doing now. We don't read the obituaries anymore. Right. But now, some do. But I look at what you just said, Tally, and I said, look how many things that to be called an Uncle Tom, to take away what's good for us, even the time. We even find our own people saying, if you're in church past 12 o'clock, you know, hey, you know, it's too long. No, but that's the time where we had the fellowship. you're taking back those things. Anyway, I'm
and I accept
way,
that
but
as truth, and having accepted it as truth, I still want to be out before 1.
I got
But
you.
but people should recognize that this idea of Uncle Tom being distorted is a part of a chain of conquest. First there's conquest, then there's subjugation, then there's appropriation, and then there's caricature. You know, I beat you, and then I reduce you.
You can't just go past that and not say it again slowly. Go ahead.
Okay, I mean, first I beat you, I conquer you, but in order for that conquest to work, then I have to subjugate you. I have to make you lower than me. So now I put in rules and laws and practices that allow our living to always underscore the fact that I've beaten you. But then that's not enough. Then I have to take your identity. I appropriate you.
Wow.
I mean, this is what happened to the indigenous cultures of America. And that's why you've got the Cleveland Indians, the Kansas City Chiefs, the Florida Seminoles, the Atlanta Braves. I have to take your identity and own that now.
Oh my goodness.
And then after that comes caricature. Now I have to change it to such a way that even you can't take you seriously.
Sambo.
And so Uncle Tom, Sambo,
Yeah.
Aunt Jemima,
Yeah.
Uncle Ben, Rasmus on Cream of Wheat. I mean, I will not, and you know, all of these guys are gone now. There's no longer any Uncle Ben. There's no longer Aunt Jemima.
They changed the name.
Right.
It's the Pearl Milling Company now, you know.
Right.
But so when caricature comes, we realize that we are aiding and abetting those who tried to conquer us in the first place. What we have to ask ourselves
see that in
is, how willing
Hollywood,
are we to be the aiders and abetters?
I see
Sorry,
that in
Charles.
Hollywood and in entertainment. I mean,
Yes.
All the time.
nothing bothers me more with cinema or with episodic TV is black people playing black people.
Man.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean,
The extreme
I
in
just
other
got
words,
that.
reinforcing
Stereotypes.
the stereotype.
Yep.
You know, and I turn it off. It doesn't help me at all. And you know, growing up, you know, we saw Good Times and you know,
that was my show.
you know, yeah, that
Daddy,
was
what's
cool,
up,
you know,
Daddy? That's yeah, man.
yeah.
You
But
know.
you know, when you compare the Bill Cosby show and the family environment that they portrayed as a black family in New York versus A Good Times or versus Prince from Bel Air. I mean, when you look at these shows, you know, you really have to look at them critically because some of them reinforce some of these prejudices in their script writing.
You know, it even and the thing you get indoctrinated to these things early. I remember Charles, and these guys might not remember Charles, but remember some of the early cartoons, Heckle and Jekyll.
Yes,
I
right.
mean these
Ben
cartoons.
and Jerry.
The
they
two
were
black
so
crows.
racist. I mean,
Yeah,
you know,
right.
And even Casper being white, he's the friendly ghost. No, but really, I mean,
No,
you,
yeah.
Oh yeah, you're right
You go
on.
back, you find it all.
I mean,
you-
the idea is to make sure that that if there are going to be any tropes or if somebody's going to try to appropriate your culture or anything, that you own the appropriation and that you don't allow it to be caricatured. And when the next time you call somebody an Uncle Tom, then you have become a bought and paid for assistant to white racists and white supremacists in
right.
appropriating a character that was once someone who set you free. That's
When
like
you
somebody
use it
coming in
that
your house.
context. Yes, I
Yeah,
agree. You use
it's
it in
like
that
somebody saying, "I want you to talk about your mother this way, that she's a no good mattress back, you know, prostitute," and you say, "Okay," you just go ahead and do it because they pay you enough to do it.
context. Right.
But on the other side, don't you think we as black people kind of have this checklist of what classifies you being really black? You know, I think
Oh yeah.
even if
Yeah, it's
we
all
don't call you Uncle Tom, we kind of have our yeah, that's not, you know. But even what you were saying, Charles, about the difference in the shows, like we saw the Cosbys, and then we saw some of the less favorable lifestyles represented. Some people say that is the black culture. Some are affluent and some are not. Isn't
Right.
that still represent? You know, isn't that still an accurate representation? Are we saying
Well-
one is not? You know,
I've always been of the opinion that when we talk about race and we talk about color, if we're going to get into colorism, when I discuss it, I discuss class first. In my opinion, class supersedes color because you can have blacks that will so-called outclass other blacks and will ostracize them because they're not in their class. Sometimes we confuse racism or prejudice with just color. It is not just color, it's class.
Sure.
You make enough money, you no longer are black, you are green. And when you go to buy a house, a yacht, a boat, or whatever, okay, you are now in a different class and your color is secondary.
But you might be
That's my
discriminated against because of the person who tries to sell you the house, and they might, you might get, a higher price. They say that if you're a black homeowner, Latasha, you can chime in. Isn't your home value considered less than your white counterparts in the same neighborhood?
Absolutely.
Well,
You get a
anything
racist
attached to
appraisal.
your life is lessened. Yeah.
Yeah, they actually encourage you, like if you're black and you're selling your home, to remove anything in the home that indicates your blackness. So you can't have your nice pictures of your black family or your nice African art. You have to just
And
remove
so if you take it
anything.
down, are you
That's
Uncle Tom?
You're an Uncle
Yeah,
Tom.
that-
Yeah.
Yes, you
that's just
are
flat out
denying.
racist.
Because you're saving yourself. You're Uncle Tom.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well,
right.
I don't know if you're an Uncle Tom, but let's just say that you are working against your own culture,
Yeah.
unlike Uncle Tom, who worked for it.
No, no, you're absolutely right about that. What a wake up call! I mean, it's an absolute wake up call because I think we speak. One of the things that I tell young people all the time is that music, media, those are the type of things that feed the way we even speak. I remember growing up watching All in the Family, and my father did not want us to watch All in the Family. If he came in and saw the All in the Family, what's his name on it? I mean,
Archie
he just-
Bunker.
Archie
Archie
Bunker.
Bunker.
right?
Oh.
It just my father just hated that. But yet, when we watched the Jeffersons, they're living in the penthouse all the way up on the top. He's continuing to call white people honky. He's continuing to. Now I could watch that. So the point I'm saying is that we still have to be educated on both sides, or we still have to be careful on both sides to what we feed ourselves and what we feed the next generation with. Because I can tell you this: it only takes us the right song to come out, the right music, the right TikTok, GP, the right Instagram, the right person to put out that the new rap star coming out now, his name is Uncle Tom.
Uncle Tom. Yeah.
Right. You know what I'm saying? And why people be like, what? Your name's Uncle Tom. Oh, you don't understand. And now the whole world
Yeah,
changes.
yeah.
Now everybody's Uncle Tom.
Right.
So I'm grateful for that, because when we even started to talk about what we were talking about this, I was like, how in the world can you even move Uncle Tom to something positive?
Yeah.
And here we are.
One of this is what we really aim at here, and that is the use of labels is a lazy man's way of sussing out value and quality. When Jesus, Jesus said, "Don't call anybody you fool" or something like that. He was
Right.
talking about the use of labels, and when you apply a label to somebody, that means I no longer have to think about you. I have judged you and put this label on you, and now I don't have to worry about you either growing, evolving, or changing. I've taken the lazy route to categorizing you. And so let's look at people and just, instead of labeling them, saying, when you cursed at me for doing X, Y, and Z, this is how I see you, instead of saying you're an uncle this or an aunt that. Tell a person, as we tell our children, use your words and tell a person, this is what I think has happened with you.
I'll tell. Just gonna say that. Use your words.
Use your words.
So yep.
Good.
I like that. That's solid.
Well, this has been even helpful for me. I mean, I knew about Uncle Tom, and as I studied it, I just had this weird feeling: is why are we putting these negative connotations on Uncle Tom? Obviously, people don't fully understand the story.
Yeah.
In Maryland right now, right in Montgomery County, there's a museum that's being established now named after Josiah Henson, and there are people there who will come to your church, talk to your folks, and share with you the story, because he came out of Maryland. You know, Maryland. I mean, Harriet Tubman came out of Maryland. Uncle
Yep.
Tom came out of Maryland. Frederick Douglass came out of Maryland.
hmm
And so they're there, and they're willing to share this story with your children if you want them to, and I can put you in contact with these people.
Please, please.
That'd be great.
And that's what I was going to say. I think, to kind of summarize it all, it's, they gave us the wrong narrative. This is our job now to correct the narrative and
Correct.
make sure
Right.
generations
Mhm.
after us, and my own children, I want to make sure
Mhm.
they have a different understanding of Uncle Tom as
Right.
they grow older.
Let me close with this. How many of you remember the days where if you wanted to insult somebody, you could call them black, or worse yet, you can call them an African?
Oh,
Mm.
yes.
You insult somebody by calling them an African, because what they did was they took the narrative and perverted it. That's the
Mhm.
only thing. I remember somebody saying, well, the one good thing that slavery did do was it got us out of Africa and brought us to a Christian America.
Mm.
That's the same thing. That misappropriation is the same thing that happens when we call
Right.
somebody an Uncle Tom.
Mhm. So we have to be very
That's right.
careful. Wow. Woo, we got a lot to think about, right?
Yeah.
We've upset our own selves, our own way of thinking.
Exactly.
But that's what it's all about. And if any of you who are watching or listening want to weigh in, we invite you to do so. You know how to get in contact with us, upset@aecsda.com. Let's hear your thoughts on this subject, and how we can change that narrative. All right, crew, it's been another great conversation. We look forward to the next time.
For
Till
sure.
then, see y'all later.
Always a pleasure.